Kayan, good morning.
Good morning.
And let's look at the 4 reasons. I mean, we know where you stand on the issue. Let's look at the why. What are these 4 issues specifically that you're concerned about?
Well, firstly, Viveka, I mean, I think first and foremost, we would like to say that this ruling is actually discriminatory based on sex and gender against Caster Semenya. International law is very clear that you cannot discriminate based on your gender and sex. It's by requiring a woman to medically undergo altering her body, which is in a natural state, is really against the right to bodily and physical integrity, the right to equality and discrimination. And there's a lot of international treaties around this: the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Their common Article 3 actually provides for equal treatment of men and women in accessing human rights. And specifically the Convention Against Elimination of the Discrimination Against Women advocates and proposes for accessing women's human rights. So we feel that to require a woman to naturally undergo this process, which we acknowledge, you know, certain athletes actually have natural advantages coming from certain geographical areas. You know, one would assume that there's almost an intersectional discrimination against Global South women. I mean, a similar case against the Indian sprinter Duty Chand as well. So from our basis, that in itself, the IAAF should actually adhere to these practices in terms of international and human rights law.
I mean,
as well.
You're right, and you have to wonder, are you going to say to certain basketball players, well, you're 10 centimeters taller than the other guy, you can't play in this in this match? I mean, it kind of amounts to the same thing with those advantages and certain people being a certain way based on where they come from or what's happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's quite interesting. The one of the second arguments we actually putting forward is that this discrimination seems to be targeted at certain individuals. So if you look at the IAAF's ruling, the events that they're targeting are specifically events that Caster is performing in and participating in. And if the rationale is that, you know, all it's to make, and they purport to do so, that all the practice is doing is trying to make it equal for all women, then how come other events that actually have shown scientifically that high testosterone levels would elevate or their advantages is not being scrutinized at this point?
Yeah. And then you have to look, I mean, how do you decide what's first of all, let's go back there. Who or how do you decide as the IAAF what a normal testosterone level is? Who does that? Who is the person who does that?
Absolutely. You know, I agree with you. And I mean, to another point, the scientific evidence is not conclusive. There's actually a lot of conflicting reports on this. I understand that Minister Qasso, who's also in Switzerland supporting Athletics South Africa and Caster and her legal team in this case, has another researcher who's presenting conflicting evidence or contradicting evidence. The IAAF has actually refused to admit that. So I'm quite interested to see what this report will have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what would be their grounds for not wanting to admit that. And, you know, even if you look at men, who's checking the testosterone levels of men? Should they not all be the same then if they're running those races?
That's a very valid point. I mean, in society, we're celebrating the men that are, you know, have high testosterone levels, that are, you know, aggressive. And I think we're, at the crux of it, we're just policing how women or female athletes should be functioning. And that's the gist of it.
I mean, we had an expert, Kayan, earlier this week who says also this has consequences for example, transgender people, for those who have had other changes or are born in different ways, like you say, different forms, sizes, shapes and colors. What do you say then? Do you say we have to have a separate race for transgender, you know, women or men or however this works? Where do you draw the line with all of these?
No, absolutely. And I mean, this is something that's actually in back channel discussions at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see where this development goes. But I mean, we stand by the fact that international best practices and South African law says one should not be discriminating based on sex and gender.
Yeah, and looking at how harmful what they're asking them to do, put another drug in their body, and like you said before, it's reverse doping is what it sounds like. How do you know that that's going to be safe and what that's going to do?
We don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, there's so much to talk about when it comes to this case, and let's see what happens. It all ends today. We'll have a decision by the end of March. Thank you very much. That's Legal Advocacy and Litigation Manager at Sonke Gender Justice, Kayan Leung.